the best thing you can do in that 45-minute window is not think at all. If you keep on picking out every single word, that's something that I tended to do when I first started out writing. I would just grab a thesaurus and be like, oh, this sounds really smart, so I'm just going to use that, toss it in there so that they think that I'm smart. You're not trying to sound smart. You're trying to put out a good argument. And whether that means you use simple words or use really big terms, it doesn't really matter.
Hey guys, how's it going? In this video, we're going to be tackling the writing section of the World Scholars Cup, specifically with a friend I made on Instagram called Maxine. She is from the Philippines and participated in the Beijing global round, and her team placed first in writing. So how are you doing, Maxine, today?
Pretty good. Don't know what to say, but yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. So my first question I want to ask you is what is the underlying principle to scoring first in writing? Something I haven't been able to figure out. And I just want to ask you, like, what is it to like score really high? Like, how do you do it?
Honestly, I feel like I only found this out myself just this year, because in the past few global rounds, I haven't placed at all for writing. Like, I would do pretty decently at regionals. I would get like top awards, but during the global round, they were like, nah, we don't like that. So what I learned is that succeeding in writing can mean a lot of things, but for the World Scholars Cup, it's really, really specific. It always focuses on clarity. So when you start to understand how little time the World Scholars Cup has in like reading each and every one of your essays, that's when you're like, okay, I can get rid of this. It's just fluff. I'm just writing that to make myself sound smarter. And that's when you start like prioritizing the critical details. That's one tip that I would have.
So how could people get to that state of clarity in their writing? Do you have any tips on how you did it, or maybe a few things people can adopt to really reach that level of high clarity in their writing? Is there anything you'd suggest?
I would say that you should focus on relatedness. So don't stray off topic, and definitely if it works for you, make sure you have an outline. This keeps you on track. Oftentimes I just like word vomit all over the place, and that never really scored well for me. So if you have no clue what you're writing about, just stop. You're gonna panic and word vomit. Just don't do that. But don't be afraid to think out of the box, because every single essay that I've written so far has been creative. So as long as you don't think it's so out of the box that they just don't understand what you're talking about, that's when you should just start like letting your mind flow free. And of course, if you have your teammates there with you, they should keep you in check and stuff.
Adding on to that, what is your line of reasoning when choosing which topic you might go through? I mean, many people kind of panic when they see a topic they might not like, but what is your specific preference when choosing which one of the 6 topics to write about?
One thing that I noticed is that the regional rounds tend to have easier topics than the global rounds, so I can understand why people panic when they see, oh, like, wow, these prompts are super hard. I don't think I'm ready for this, but this is what you should do. And it may seem obvious, but pick the topic that speaks the most to you, the one that you're the most educated about, and the one that here's the thing. You have to pick the topic that is most related to the theme of the World Scholars Cup that year. So just a personal anecdote, I chose the English topic for the global round. It was something about writing a slam poem of your life. And you were only supposed to explain the slam poem. You didn't have to write a slam poem, but I actually wrote the slam poem. So that was probably like an added thing. You definitely don't have to do that. That was just sporadic, but yeah.
Next up is, what format of writing would you recommend? Just in general, would you recommend the standard essay, some creative, a specific format, interview, letter? Well, what would you recommend just in general?
I really like creative essays, because this is what the World Scholars Cup says. They say that traditional essays and creative essays are like weighted equally, but in my personal opinion, if it doesn't work for you, it's fine. But creative essays always stand out more than traditional essays, no matter what you do. But don't let that get you down. Like, if you just really aren't that much of a creative person, like my teammate, he also scored really high. He won a trophy for writing. He wrote a traditional essay on the Stanford prison experiments, I think, and he did pretty well with that. So don't worry much about, just do whatever you're comfortable with.
When it comes to the first 25 minutes of prep, how do you allocate that time, and what do you do in that brief period that you get to choose your topic and reconvene with your team? Kind of what's your tack strategy in that 25 minutes?
Once again, go through the list together. Take time to like really read into the topics. Like, what is this trying to ask me? What is this gonna mean? Where can I take this? Because in the end, it's a collaborative writing competition. So you really gotta get your teammates in. They have really helpful input.
Okay, this next question is in that 45 minutes that we all dread, and it's the actual writing of the essay. Do you have any tips for writing fast and thinking of the exact ideas, or the clearest and most concise way to express what you've written or what you've planned out? And kind of what's your strategy in those 45 minutes?
This might be a bit more of like a non-traditional answer, but the best thing you can do in that 45-minute window is not think at all. Because, and hear me out first, if you keep on picking out every single word, that's something that I tended to do when I first started out writing. I would just grab a thesaurus and be like, oh, this sounds really smart, so I'm just going to use that, toss it in there so that they think that I'm smart. You're not trying to sound smart. You're trying to put out a good argument. And whether that means you use simple words or use really big terms, it doesn't really matter. Just keep it clear, make sure it sticks to your points, because above all, the words don't matter that much. Writing quickly shouldn't necessarily be your goal, because if your goal is to fill in every single one of the pages they give you, you're going to end up going over the page count and you're not going to have any space for what you want to say. Just make sure that you have enough to say to fill in, say, maybe 3 pages. Don't try to just fill in 1 page and leave it at that. Quantity doesn't really matter. The old saying goes that quality trumps quantity, and it's really cliche, but it definitely works. And honestly, I've found that the shorter the essays I wrote, the better the content.
Yeah, okay. And adding on in the last 15 minutes where we finally get to chat to our teammates, what are your collaboration strategies in the last 15 minutes? Do you review the essays? Do you talk to each other? Do you like edit for misspelled words, or what do you do in those 15 minutes?
So 15 minutes, that's the shortest amount of time you'll have for that one part of the competition. So checking for misspelled words isn't really a priority. It's all about what you're saying. So, and collaboration is really important. It's one thing to score well as an individual scholar, that's amazing, but it's never a good idea to let your teammates suffer in the process, because that just makes you a bad person. So my tip for this would be to prioritize your own essay, but only slightly more than your teammates, because theirs matters too. I would go through their essay, I would read it, I would give some feedback, like, hey, maybe this section, I don't know, could you add like maybe 1 word, because you can't really write that much by that point. So just ask them like, hey, what did you mean here? And then they can just rethink it, maybe.
Yeah. And would you suggest read the entire thing, or just quickly scan through everyone's essay?
Quickly skim, but if you're just like going through it, just trying to find words, that's not helpful. Just make sure you understand what you're reading. Yeah. One thing that I did during a regional round, I think this was the 2017 regional round. No, 2019, yeah. It was recently.
So this
2019.
year.
Yeah. I was writing an essay on ghostwriting and whether or not they deserve credit. And in that last 15 minutes, I just completely erased one of my pages because I thought it just sounded really bad. And that ended up doing well for me, because I ended up scoring, I think, 2nd that time. It was
Yeah. Again, from the master of collaborative writing of the World Scholars Cup. And our final question that I have here is, do you do any prep before the competition at all? Is there any way you prepare for the writing? Do you have like a specific writing exercise, or anything specific you do that helps you succeed?
I'm really as you can probably tell from my preferred format, I'm not that much of a structured writer. I kind of just write whatever I feel like, and I don't really have a technique. I kind of just say what's on my mind. I keep my essays very personal to me, and that's what I did. That's why I picked the English topic this year. It was very me-centric and very personalized, and I think that that's what the judges really seek after when they read essays. I would consider myself a writer in my free time, but I definitely write more than the average student, but I never really practiced for the World Scholars Cup per se, because I'd rather much read about other things, because above all, being a writer is all about being a reader, and you got to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You got to stay informed with everything that's happening in the world. That's what matters more than just...
Do you see any constant correlation with the topics and the curriculum? Meaning, is there specific things the Scholars Cup people who come up with the essay topics look for in the curriculum that kind of help them come up with the topics themselves? Because that would be very helpful for people who want to like prepare for topics that they might actually put up on the competition day. Do you see any correlation, anything you've realized in that type of factor?
I feel as though a lot of the time it doesn't really matter so much what the topic is, so much as how it relates to the theme. Like, for instance, in 2019, the theme was A World on the Margins, and we were talking about, it was the English prompt once again, it was talking about Alex Dung's poetry. I didn't reference Alex Dung's poetry that much. I probably mentioned it once because I made it really personal to me. But the key thing that I did was tie it back to the overarching theme of entanglement. Margin. Oh my god!
Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, that's last year, a little too late.
Yeah, one thing that I did was make sure that it tied back to the theme of margins, because that's the overarching theme. They're not going to fact check your essay. This doesn't mean that you can go around saying like, oh, this person killed this many people, etc. But it does mean that you don't have to get everything right, because they're not looking for like the facts, like, oh, Schrodinger did this or whatever. It's all about relating back to the theme, because that's what most people know. Well, the good thing about this theme being so vague, it's usually just one word, right? Like margin. You can interpret it in as many ways as you want, so much as you make sure that the reader understands, like, oh, this is a person on the margins. Because me personally, I talk about how I am, I don't know, a girl in a Southeast Asian country, pretty marginalized, I would suppose. And that kind of, just takes it back to the theme. So you can get really creative. You don't have to stress too much about like how much this relates or how much that. Writing is, I don't know, it shouldn't get you down if you don't score well, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best writer if you score really high, because in the end, once again, it's a competition that's testing you to write within a 45 minutes time frame. You're not going to produce your best work all the time, and you shouldn't let that one essay dictate whether or not you're good at writing. Like, I've had several friends that think that they're bad writers just because they didn't score well. That's not the case.
Yeah, and this has been Maxine from the Philippines, attended the Beijing Global Round, and her team scored first place in the writing champion. I'm very happy to have you on the YouTube channel, and until next time, stay productive. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.